Get it all today. That's all I can tell you.
It is not for the timid.
Get more. I just don't want to get so
So did you miss me?
Yes. Where you been?
Pastor Ryan is in Frankenmuth this weekend with his wife. They're attending Winterfest. I don't know if they have any snow or not. I know they have a lot of it. They're right on the edge of all that snow. So hopefully they have a good time. They'll be back hopefully Tuesday, and he will be back next Saturday.
I think they still have snow up there. I know there's still snow in Door County. So.
Yeah, there's snow on the west side.
Starting Route 28 North Pine Street.
They got well over 2 feet of snow on the west side of the state with all the lake effect snow. We'll see. We are going to be in chapter 18 of Exodus, and we're in chapter 4 of this book, lesson 4, Growing Older and Wiser. Dale and Sandy Larsen from InterVarsity, or at least that's the company that printed it. I don't know who these two people are. Oh, good. There's answers in the back. All right. Reader's notes. Study 5. No, 34. It turned out to be really good the way it worked out that I would take this lesson since Pastor Ryan doesn't have any children at all. And my 3 sons are grown up now in their 20s, middle 20s going on. So I hope that I can learn something. I don't know that I could teach anything about helping kids learn from their parents. But maybe you can. You can teach me something about it. We are following along on Facebook and YouTube. For joining us this way. Share it. Click the bell. If there's a bell or a heart or a thumbs up, let us know and give a good review. Gets more people at it. Let's go ahead and start in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together. Bless us as we study your word in Exodus with Moses and his father-in-law and how that can teach us when kids are grown-ups and how we can help each other in living this life that you have called us to live. In Jesus' name, amen. So if you're got a Bible, we're going to be in Exodus 18, and we'll be there mostly in Exodus 18. We are going to also maybe jump around to 1 Samuel 1, it looks like, a little bit later on. There's coffee, there's hot chocolate, there's tea in the back. I got some more water, so there's more water in the machine. And I got some week-old cinnamon buns. They were on sale. So, do American young people marry against their parents' wishes? This is a Chinese student that asked Dale and Sandy Larsen. I assume they had a campus ministry or some kind. He said that for us, the Chinese young people, the opinion of parents is very important. We would not marry without the consent of our parents. And most Americans probably find themselves torn between these two opinions. We believe that grown children should respect and listen to their parents, but we look down on adults who remain under the thumb of mom and dad. When our children become adults, how much should we expect them to continue to defer to us? And if that question wasn't complex enough, what about our daughters-in-law or sons-in-law? What about younger people in general? Long before any of us faced these questions, Moses and his father-in-law, Jethro, confronted them under great pressure in a remote desert. That'll be Exodus 18. But to kind of prime the well here, get some water up. When do you freely voice your opinions to younger people, and when do you hesitate?
It depends upon who the younger people are.
Okay.
I mean, Keith voices his opinions to younger people all the
all
time
the time.
in his role as a teacher.
And I don't hesitate.
You don't have to pay.
And I also get reported to the Office of Diversity, Equity, and
So why would you do that?
why would I do what?
Do what you do.
Why would you, how's that?
Yeah. Why do you do it?
Why do I keep my opinion? Offering it? Because
Yeah.
I think they need it.
Okay. Fair.
I think they need to hear,
They have a different opinion, I think.
not all of them.
Oh, good.
This is just a couple of people that, particularly one had filed a complaint, The rest of them are all pretty good.
Then you have to know that you're doing something right. Somebody's complaining.
And I think if it's our own children, obviously, we're gonna give our opinions a lot more freely than to strangers or students, or
Why do you think that's the case?
because they're our children, because we have some responsibility for them, even when they're grown.
But then when there's in-laws involved, it becomes a little different.
Yes. The daughter-in-law is a little more difficult.
Is it? I don't have any.
I have a wonderful daughter-in-law. I wouldn't, but I really try to practice what I'm going to say before I say something. Where with my son, I just tell him, hey, this isn't working out too good, But with her, I try to
Be more diplomatic.
be more diplomatic, but she's very good. There's nothing.
If they are upset and they turn against you, that's kind of just working against what you're trying to accomplish anyway. If they don't want to hear what you have to say, and then they stop listening to other things you have to say.
Mhm.
Or actively oppose what you have to
Oppose
say.
it.
Right.
But I would say, and you feel this as well, when your sons were younger, they thought you were an idiot. Maybe when my son got to be 30, it was like all of a sudden he realized that what I'd been telling him wasn't so bad.
Right.
John, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Wisdom comes with age.
that they get a little, appreciate it more.
That's an old saying.
It is,
Yeah,
but it's
my-
true.
My relationship with my daughter when she was in high school was terrible, and now it's wonderful. I think each of us has grown.
Good point.
You never stop growing. That's a good point. I think that there's a fine line that we walk as well. How far can I go to say something where they're going to be open to it, and then I step over that line and they're just going to shut down or leave, never come back, and that's not what we want either. It's a juggling act. It's a balancing act. It's very hard.
Yeah, and I think, again, as a parent, you're torn between wanting to be the parent and also go out in the world, it's your world, go out, do what you need to do.
Right. And how do you learn? You learn by
Making
doing.
mistakes.
Yeah, you learn by doing. Okay, so as I turn the page in the leader's guide, in the workbook here, think of a time when you offered advice to a younger person. Was it easy or difficult? And if you were hesitant to speak out, why? Are you glad you spoke up? What happened as a result? So those are all the questions. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it depends again on the, Sunday nights I see 4 to 8 young people, and I give them advice all day long. But I think that if I thought they would actually take my advice, that would be different. I wonder if I would act differently. I mean, I do it out of obligation now. This is what I'm supposed to do. But I also have to balance that. But how do I get them to actually listen and to take it? And the advice I'm giving them is basic Lutheran Christianity. This is the Lord's Supper. Take it. This is prayer. Do it. This is your daily table of duties. That's the next 2 weeks we're talking about. This is what you do. But it becomes difficult when you want them to actually listen to you and put it into practice. At least it is for me. I'm hesitant to speak out to my boys because I don't want them to leave the family. And maybe I'm just being fearful that they won't actually leave the family. Maybe I don't have a confidence in my parenting style or parenting skills too.
Well, those are certainly all things that I think we all take into account. I mean, I think in terms of your being the confirmation leader, I think that's a little bit different than dealing with your sons.
Yeah. Right.
Two different approaches.
One's a teacher lecture type
Right.
of thing, yeah.
And whether it is or not, you're a pastor and there is some inherent respect to what you're saying, being a pastor,
I would hope so.
for most people.
Yeah, there was when I was growing up.
Yeah, I still think there is.
Good.
Is it less now than perhaps when we were growing up? Probably. The same with any authority figure.
Right. I mean, we see that with teachers, don't we?
Absolutely.
You know, that if you gave a bad grade to a student and as a teacher, you gave a bad grade to a student and parents would say, hey, what's wrong with you, student? They were talking, now they talk you.
They earned it.
Yeah, what's wrong with you, teacher, get a bad grade?
Well, that's the one good thing about my job. We don't have to talk to any parents.
Yeah.
You look at
Well, wait, you know what? Hold on a second there, because do you send anything out printed or electronically to that house or their address, or how does that work? Because I heard different that a parent caught somebody who was outside of school, it was College of Lake County, caught something, either electronically or paper, and from that school and got on the student. So, but Loyola does not send anything out.
well, it's law that they're not, it's the state
Privacy laws.
privacy. You don't deal with
Okay.
it. We
Well,
don't deal with it.
somebody
So
saw
somebody
something, I don't know what they saw then, but anyway,
A student may have given it to their parent.
oh, that could have been it then.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't realize that because there was an issue,
No.
and then, so then maybe the student finally showed the parent, oh, okay.
Or left the laptop open.
We're really encouraged, we're told not to talk to the parents about anything, and parents will call, parents will give us an email, and I'll say, because of, we're not supposed to talk to you about this kind of stuff. Please talk to your son or daughter.
Right.
But in high school, though, I believe in others, grade
I
school
don't
all the
know.
way up, I think it's sent to
Yes.
I remember in grade school, they found it, you know what it is, you had to sign off on it. So it was, let's say, a paper, and then the parents needed to sign off, so you had to show it to them. And I think then you'd bring it back, but that's how they would find out a lot of times, since I remember, because it was where you had to sign off, the parent, but anyway.
So it makes it difficult, especially when there's more people involved. When there's, now you're expanding this, and we all have different opinions on what it is doing. I think it comes back to why do we do it? I mean, I was kind of pushing John a little bit of why he does this with his children. Why do you do this? And why do we put ourselves out there, giving advice, guiding the younger generation? Because it's our responsibility as parents, it's our responsibility as teachers, yes, it's our obligation, but it's also with our kids, we love them. And we want them to benefit from the experience that we have gone through, the wisdom of our experience. And they really can't understand that until they actually live it themselves. But if there's this basis of love at the beginning, this is where I get a little, I am less confident. Did I love them enough when they were younger? Will they take my advice now, as 20-somethings?
I think the pace of change in society goes against that a little, because if it were more consistent, your experiences would match theirs better. But as it changes faster and faster, our experiences don't match those of the young people.
It's interesting how some of it is faster and some of it is a lot slower. I mean, when I was their age, I was out of the house. I was either in graduate school or living on my own. I would come back for a season maybe, but I'm not living at home. But yeah, they're growing up faster, but they're actually not, in certain ways, not as fast anymore. They're still living at home.
I didn't
20s,
have to deal
30s.
with social media.
Yeah.
In fact, I wasn't social at all, so I didn't have to deal with anything social. But there's things that are different. Like, okay, now it's all like you can't. Well, when I was young, you could probably A lot of people hitchhike, can't, right, that's dangerous. Well, you can't even walk across the street anymore, it's dangerous, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah,
that's a lot different than what.
even in our neighborhood, you really can't be out after dark.
Yeah.
In the neighborhoods that we live
Especially
in.
in Chicago, I wouldn't want to be walking the dog
I'm
anytime.
talking about Hawthorne Woods or Mundelein.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to walk on the streets at night.
I think Keith's point on what the college professor, teacher can tell parents. When we were in college, parents knew everything. They were,
Really?
when I was, yeah. Well, of course, that was, back BCE,
Well,
but
Yeah, you're not, because my parents didn't give a rat's behind if I went to school or not, Matter of fact, they said, don't go to school.
I lived at home in college, so
Yeah,
I went away to college after my freshman year, but my parents were footing the bill. So
was
they
I.
had they
Right.
felt,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My dad said, you want to go, find a way to go. Thanks, Dad.
So, I mean, obviously.
that's not necessarily bad.
No, it worked out, and you feel bad, but at the same time, it taught me a really good lesson that I had to be responsible for everything and whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And you just learn to set goals pretty quickly, and you work your butt off to get it, which wasn't a bad thing.
Hey, you mentioned these kids nowadays. I moved out at 23, and for many years I was so pissed off at myself that I didn't move out when I was much younger. I was working full-time, going to college full-time, College Lake County, but still, I go, why didn't I, because I figured when I moved out, it was easy. I go, what? I was so pissed off, I should have moved out at 18. I really thought, and still to this day, to me it was easy. I figured it out financially. You work enough hours, you'll make it financially. I was overtime king for 45 years. So these kids now, I'm like, I moved out at 23, and for years I was so pissed off. Why didn't I move out at 18? I still could have figured it out, gone to college, worked full time, and I did. And I go, man, I spent 5 years when I should have been out of that house at 18. I still think that at age 64. There's 5 years I should have been on my own. But these kids now, they're in their 20s, 30s at home. I go, man, my friends too, we were out there getting married, having babies. I'm like, we were not hanging. No one was living at home. We were all out, getting out. But anyway, yeah, today, I go, man, there's no way. I go, 23, I felt like an old man when I moved out. I did. I felt like a freaking old man. Why did I stay here so long? I'm 23.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, that's just, I thought our generation, that's maybe how we thought,
I think a lot of it depends on the age of the person you're talking to. I know I did not want to listen to the Pope, but what I was told when I was 16 and 18 years old and 20 years old, I wanted to do it my way, and some of it was not as good. Now, my kids, they're in their 50s, I can tell them anything, and it goes over very well. The in-laws could be a different story. The grandkids, 30 years old, don't want to listen.
There's a huge disconnect between parents and children, of course. But think about my generation. When I was 18, I graduated high school. I went to college. That's what my generation did. My grandfather, when he was 18, had a rifle in his hand. It was in Europe or the Pacific, 18 years old, and by the time they were done, I was done with college at 22, for example. By the time they were done, they had been promoted several times. They've had Purple Heart, they've had several citations, and they had a GI Bill, and they won a war. And it's completely different. Talk about a disconnect. There's no way that someone like me can ever fathom, connect with that at all. I can be in awe of it, yes. That's one thing, but if I don't listen to them, that would be a huge mistake, as you said. Your kids listen to you because they realize by the time they're that age, you've got some wisdom. But the grandchildren, not so much. Oh well. All right, so this lays the basis for what we're going to talk about. We're in Exodus 18. Under Moses' leadership, God miraculously brought the enslaved Israelites out of Egypt. They reached the vicinity of Mount Sinai, but they had not yet received the Ten Commandments. Okay? Moses' Midianite wife, Zipporah, and his 2 sons, they had not been there at the Exodus. They stayed back after Moses and Aaron left and went down and got Israel out of Egypt. Now they joined them at the Hebrew camp at Mount Sinai. That's where we are at. And Midian is north, from north and more east of Egypt. But if you think about it, if you're trying to picture it in your mind, Midian is basically where Palestine is today on the east bank, east of the Dead Sea. So it's south and east of Israel today. That's where Midian is. And Jethro is a priest of Midian. That's Exodus 18. I know there's a lot of names in here, so I'll just take us through this. Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Okay? And now Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had taken Zipporah, Moses' wife, his daughter, right? And after he had sent her home, so she did not go along with the 2 sons into Egypt to get them out. The name of the one son was Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. That's what it means. And the other name was Eleazar, for he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. Notice how it said that every single time.
I did.
Yeah. No ambiguity here who Jethro is. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness where he was encamped at the mountain of God, that's Sinai. And when he sent a word to Moses, your father-in-law Jethro, I'm coming to you with your wife and your 2 sons with her, Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed down and he kissed him, showed respect as a priest, and they asked each other of their welfare and went into their tent. How are things? Right? They exchanged pleasantries. Then they go into their tent. Then, this is verse 8. Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had come upon them in the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel, in that he had delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians. Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, Yahweh, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because in this affair they dealt arrogantly with the people. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. The next day, Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone? And all the people stand around you from morning till evening. And Moses said to his father-in-law, Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them know the statutes of God and his law. Moses' father-in-law said to him, What are you doing? What you are doing is not good. You and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out for the things you have before you. You are not able to do it alone. Now, obey my voice. I will give you advice, and God be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God, and you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws and make them know the way in which they must walk and what they must do. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chief of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens, and let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but any small matter they shall decide themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you, you will be able to endure, and all this people also will go to their place in peace. So Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the peoples, chief of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, of tens. And they judged the people at all times. Any hard case they brought to Moses, but any small matter They decided themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart and went away to his own country. Sound familiar? I mean, this process, you know, the real important stuff Moses could take care of, but then the lesser important stuff that other people can take care of. This becomes the basis for the elders of Israel, which 1,400 years later will condemn Jesus to death. But okay, that's where this is coming from. And you know, Jethro is the originator of this type of plan.
It sounds like our modern day society of judges where the top judge is Supreme Court and everybody just kind of, so Moses is on almost the Supreme Court and everybody, all the other judges kind of fall below, I guess, where
That's exactly right.
elevated to
Then you
that.
got your state Supreme Courts, and you got your Circuit Court of Appeals, and you got your federal court, state courts, stuff like that.
Right,
Local.
he's sitting on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, he's the ultimate because he is the prophet of God in this place. All right. Potential conflicts in the story. Potential points of conflict. There's a couple of them here. I know that there's answers on the back though.
Well, clearly, Moses and his father-in-law,
What?
on two levels. One, because his father-in-law is telling him what to do, and two, because it's his father-in-law. It's not even his father.
Yeah.
And maybe Moses enjoyed handling all the cases, he didn't want to just do.
Well, we know that's not true.
Right.
We know that's not true.
Yeah.
Moses ended up complaining all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, these people are just, and he did.
Yeah.
He hated this, and so that I think that's one of the reasons that he
So
picked
maybe he
on
was
it.
just as glad
He
to
was
be
happy,
elevated to that Supreme Court spot where he's just handling the big cases. And leave the little piddly stuff and all the
That's right.
to the other judges.
Yeah, but having been in that milieu, it's really hard to let go.
Yes.
You know you should, but it's really hard to let go. So for Moses, he was probably, yeah, I should let go of some of this stuff, but you know what? I want my hands on everything. I want my.
He
I'm
wants
Moses.
to micromanage all the way through, maybe?
Remember too, what's repeated over and over again here.
Father-in-law.
Yeah, that's the relationship they had, and Moses worked for him for 40 years. He was a shepherd in Jethro's camp, Jethro's tent, and that's how he met Zipporah. So he's the son-in-law working for this guy.
And what's the age difference at this point in time between Moses and Jethro?
That's a good question. I don't know how old Jethro is.
I don't ever remember.
Moses is 80. We know that. So I think Exodus 2 is where we first meet him.
Just having a cultural difference, maybe.
There's definitely a cultural
Or
difference.
age
Yes.
difference, as John mentioned, is difficult. I mean, I see that where I work. I'm sure everybody does. Or positions of power.
But as you get older, your bosses are getting younger sometimes,
Yeah.
so I didn't have a problem with that. As long as they were competent and treated me fair, I had no problem. That was just me.
Yeah.
You know, there were older people maybe who weren't treating people fair and they were disliked, but said if you are treating people fair and you're competent, I think you'll gain respect no matter if you're 15 years younger now or now you're 25 years younger than someone you're supervising or managing.
I think Moses is, when he meets Jethro, he's 40 years old. This we know. So if we just go with, okay, so Zipporah must be right around, maybe a little bit younger, probably 20. So Jethro is probably, near Moses' age, if not just a tad older. I think that would be safe to say. But Moses did consider Jethro as his superior, father-in-law, employer, and priest. He's a priest of Midian. This is the way it was up until this time because the priestly Israelites religious system is just now being established. So they had these local people. They were the king. They were the priest of their region, or at least of their family, and that's what this is. That's one of the potential conflicts. The cultural differences. Jethro is not Israel; he's Midian. So, and Midian is related, but distantly to Israel. Midian traces their lineage back to, I'm drawing a blank. It's either to Abraham or through Lot, one of the two. So it goes back that way. And it's, again, the cultural differences, we don't know too much about it. Obviously, he mentions gods, not that he worships multiple gods, but that there are at least acknowledgement that there are multiple gods, and that Israel's God is just one of them. But Jethro then recognizes, because of what has happened, that Yahweh is the chief of gods. He's more powerful than all those. So we have all these conflicts here, potential conflicts here. Question 2, when you see a younger person making foolish or dangerous choices, what do you do?
Try and stop.
Okay. How? Depends on what it is, I suppose.
And who the person is.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of mitigating circumstances here, but I know some people would just say, hey, fool around and find out. That's the only way you're going to learn.
Some people say it's caught, not taught, so you need to be an example.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always work.
Yeah. You tell them, hey, this isn't going to work out for you. You're going to be sorry. Oh, what do you know? And it happens exactly what you said. Yeah, I'm sorry.
When you have to dial 911 for the ambulance, then, hey, that might.
Well, a lot of times you can see what they're doing. You got 9 and 1 already dialed in. So, because you know how it's going to end. It ain't going to end well. So, yeah, it's you want to stop them. You want to at least tell them, look, and how would you know it was foolish? Because you probably have some experience in this, right? That's something that people don't understand. Is that how can somebody older than me have any kind of experience in what I am? Mostly because they weren't paying attention when they were younger. And then maybe that's not a bad thing either. We don't think our parents have any experience of what we're going through because we never watched them go through that. We were just there, doing our own thing.
It's hard to judge too, because sometimes as you get older, you go, what were my parents thinking about when they were in their 20s or 30s? My parents were young when I was born. But still, it's at the point where it wasn't a good decision they made. As you get older, you realize, well, and then you think, well, they were in their 20s, so maybe they just, they were in their 20s, because my mom had me when she was like 21, so I remember a lot of years when she was in her 20s, and my dad, same thing, and I just think of some of the things that they did weren't real smart, because I've had no kids, so I'm not being judged. I guess I'm judging them and other people. But yeah, when in their 20s they weren't making some really great decisions. But I mean, I'm not going to knock them, but I just think, well, those were some really bad decisions you made back when you're in your 20s.
But also, as you're going through your 20s, did it ever occur to you your parents did this too? And I think that sometimes that doesn't occur to us. Again, like my grandfather, when I was 19 years old, 20 years old, it never occurred to me that my grandfather had done something very similar, or at least had gone through, and actually did a lot more than I ever could imagine at 18 or 20 years old. When I was 18, that was Grenada. So, we didn't have much going on in our country as it is. That was our one military conflict was Reagan sent the Marines into Grenada. So, it completely different. So when we got to the 90s, I guess was Gulf War I, that the early 90s?
Yeah.
To think about that made a big difference. But did my parents go through that? I don't know. I guess I never really thought of it, and they must have. They must have. Look at verses 5 and 8. Exodus 18, 5 and 8. 5, 6, 7, and 8. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness when he was encamped at the mountain of God. And when he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and 2 sons with her, Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, bowed down, kissed him. They asked each other their welfare. They went into the tent. Then Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians, for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had come upon them in the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. What does this tell us about their relationship?
The act of respect.
There's respect. What else is in there? I mean, that's standard practice, bowing down and kissing as a show of respect. That's standard. Okay. What else though is there?
I think they cared for each other.
Yeah.
Maybe love, add some love, caring love.
And interesting, as you see, if you look in the answer guide at the end of your handout, there's a guy by the name of Walton, Matthews, and Chavlis, three of them, called the Bible Background Commentary, saying this is the only time in Scripture that both bowing down and kissing are mentioned. The bowing down is the respect, the kissing is the friendship. And this is the only time both are done. So there's that going on. What does Moses tell Jethro?
Tells them all about the fights against it.
And why? I think that is. Think about that situation. Picture it.
To stress how important the Lord was in
Okay.
carrying Moses and the Israelites through that. I don't think Moses is tooting his own horn. Maybe he is. Maybe since he was a shepherd for his father-in-law, this is his chance to impress his father-in-law. That would be, I think, somewhat normal.
Well, he left his family with him, right? I mean, it's gotta be some, like, why did he do that?
Right. And now he knows why. You know, it was dangerous. I don't think Moses expected to live through the experience. I think we get that early on in Exodus 3. I go, Pharaoh's going to kill me. So that's why he didn't bring his kids too, and his wife. I think about this though. It just occurs to me that they come together. They haven't been around each other for what, a year, maybe 2 years, that this has happened. I'm not sure how long. It's probably not 2 years. It's probably about a year, the length of time that Moses shows up with, and then the plagues, and then the Exodus. So maybe a year has gone by. Catches up Jethro on everything that has happened, and it's almost as if, hey, let me tell you about what happened. He's excited to tell Jethro because he's his friend. This is and again, we talked about the age difference. Maybe the age difference isn't quite as far apart as it would be between a father and a son. Moses is 40 years old at this point. 80 years old at this point. And so when he first meets Jethro, he's 40 years, because he's 40 years out there under Jethro. He's 40 when he leaves Egypt. He's gone for 40 years. He comes back when he's 80. And this takes another 40 years. Moses dies at 120. So Jethro is probably, maybe 10, 20 years older than Moses. So they're more contemporaries kind of thing. Which, if you think about it as an adult coming back to your parents that you did something, did you ever, it's not really bragging, but just to catch them up. I mean, I'm thinking that John, you bring a case to the Supreme Court. You would want to tell your parents about that. You'd be, that would be cool. Guess what I just did, type of thing. With my dad, he was 21 years older than me. So, almost the same dynamic. And he's been gone now 2 years, Christmas Eve, this last year. And I still find, when I bought the house, we closed on the house about a month after he died, a little bit over a month after he died. And I found myself, I need to call my dad to let him know, and he wasn't there anymore. I get that, and I get that this is kind of what's happening here with Moses and Jethro. So Moses is already predisposed to listen to whatever Jethro has to say as far as advice. And I don't think that Moses is telling Jethro anything that, I don't get the impression that he's saying, what can I do? How can I make this better? It's just that Jethro observes all of this, and that's not verse 13, but maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. So,
Yeah, I think the relationship is better than what we would say the garden variety father-in-law,
Yeah.
son-in-law relationship is.
yeah. I think so too.
Did Moses even know his father?
Probably he knew his mother, but probably not.
Yeah, so
Maybe
maybe
he
he's,
is adopted too.
Yeah, he knew that father. He knew his adopted father, but
It's different. Like you're adopted.
well, he really didn't have an adopted father too. The Pharaoh's daughter didn't have a husband, so Pharaoh actually kind of was a sort of surrogate
I'm
father.
just saying he had a kind of wonky like childhood.
Oh, definitely.
Like, this might have been more you,
Oh yeah.
like the more
Yes.
of his family.
He had a very strange upbringing. Yes, I would. Very unique.
so
And then
his
40
father,
years here.
his father-in-law is actually like his father.
Yeah, definitely.
Might be.
I think so.
I haven't heard the word wonky in a while.
Sorry. Next generation.
No, that's my old school
At
guy.
least he understands.
The young kid said,
That's fine.
that's old school.
I'm sorry.
Willy Wonka? What did you say, Willy Wonka?
Yes, I hadn't heard it.
Yeah.
It was nice.
The question is, Moses tells them all this. How does Jethro respond to this? And this is verse 9 and 10. 11 and 12 too, but
Throws a party for us.
true, but
Let's open it up.
yeah, but who does Jethro give credit to?
Well, he said brought offerings and sacrifices to God.
Yeah, if you notice in verse 9, the Lord is mentioned. Verse 10, the Lord is mentioned. Verse 11, the Lord is mentioned. Moses isn't mentioned until basically verse 12, only telling us who Jethro is. Jethro doesn't say anything about Moses. It's always God. And I don't, we might play the cynic in this, cynically looking that Moses may have been upset. I did all this stuff and no, you didn't. God did. But I think that probably would be misguided to do that. I think Moses always would have said, this is God's doing. He would have deflected any praise that came his way back to the Lord, but he didn't have to worry about that. Jethro does not keep any praise on Moses, but on God. Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel, that he had delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians, not Moses. Of course, Moses said that too in verse 8. The Lord delivered them. Okay. So I think that, again, this speaks to the relationship they have with each other. It's on the right path. It's on the right foundation. It's about God. This isn't about them. It's about God. Now, what is the surprising aspect the next day? This starts in verse 13. What surprises Jethro?
Moses is trying to be Superman.
Yeah, Moses is doing all the work by himself. Again, this is before the Ten Commandments come down. Okay? And Jethro is just, you can't do this by yourself. Which we look at it, it's like, well, of course. What Moses is going to kill himself. From morning to night, from sunrise to sunset, these people are there giving him, fix this for me. Every little problem, we get the impression they come to Moses for. How long did Jethro observe the situation before he said anything? This is in verse 13.
Like all day.
Yeah, he watched everything that had been going on in verse 14 all day long. Okay? So, is that an appropriate length of time? Let's see.
Get to see the whole situation.
I mean, I think if we're looking at the relationship in terms of giving advice, the more observant you are, hopefully the better your advice will be taken.
Yeah. He just doesn't jump in and give this. Hey, do
Right.
it this way.
Yeah.
And
Passed by and saw you talking to all these people.
right. Moses could never say, "Oh, you don't know what's going on." Though. He could never respond that way because Jethro, obviously, he knows exactly what's going on. He was sitting there watching it all day long.
So do you think Moses knew Jethro was watching him?
I would
we don't
assume so.
get that in the story, but
I would assume so.
especially for the length of time, I would think he would realize that.
His
It wasn't-
father-in-law
it wasn't-
standing there,
It
yeah.
wasn't a short time, right, when it's all day.
Well, you know,
Right.
they didn't go out and do something together. Moses was working.
Moses is working, so, you know, they're at the tent, so. Remember, there's no tent of meeting yet, so I would assume that they are at Moses' tent. There's no, the tent of meeting comes up later. Okay. So, before he gives any advice, what effort did Jethro make to understand the situation and Moses' perspective on the situation? This is in verses 14 and 15. What does Jethro do?
Well, first he watched, and then he
Yes.
said, what are you doing?
He asks questions, right?
Question.
What is this you're doing? And why do you sit alone? And all the people stand around you. So he said, you know, what is it you're doing? And we assume that there's an answer there. That's the way I read that. That even though the two questions are given back to back, that maybe Moses answered the question. And that prompted, well, so why are you doing this alone? Why are you the only one doing this? But in Moses' answer, though, is, well, they're coming to me. I got to do it. You know, God called me, so I must, you know.
And he's probably pretty excited to teach them about God's,
Yeah.
you know, ways. And I was like, hey, I get to do this. That was cool. But,
Or he felt obligated. You know, God talked to me out of the burning bush. I did all this, and God defeated Pharaoh just as he said, and I'm the one that was in front of everything. I'm obligated to do this. It's going to have to come down to me. But before he, what I like about this is that before he even gets to that point, saying, "Who else could do this?" Jethro jumps in, okay, and says, "Hey, whoa, wait a minute, though. You're only human." You know, that's at verse 17. He gives a rather blunt evaluation of what Moses is doing. But you can't do this. Obviously, you're killing yourself. But what misgivings might have gone through Jethro's mind before he spoke? That's a good question. Does it have an answer? It does. Jethro might have thought of things like, Moses is God's chosen leader. I shouldn't say anything. He's known as a hothead. What if he threatens me? My daughter will be mad at me if I say anything. It's not my place to criticize. I'll probably change while I'm here and then go back to the old ways after I leave. So why bother? I don't know about that. There's nothing in Jethro's, what's revealed to us about Jethro or Moses, for that matter, that would lead us to believe that that's what's going through Jethro's mind. But that may be what's going through our mind.
But it's interesting, all of those things you just read, I would venture to say each of us has had those same
Yes.
rationalizations
Exactly.
in conflict situations.
Right.
Who am I to say anything? Or, what are they going to think of me? Or what's the family going to think of me if I say something?
Right. The scriptures go to a great length, especially in Exodus, to tell us that Moses was just a guy like us. He had his doubts, he had his own fears, he had his own confidence issues, just like we would. You find this as the case a lot, which is why it's important to look at these characters as examples to us because they're so much like us. They're human. Scriptures don't gloss over the fact that they have flaws. Never hide the fact that these people were sinners, that these people had made mistakes, and that these people thought exactly like what we would expect human beings to think. They were not super people. So I think that's an important point too. Have you ever felt like that with your own children? I think if you have children, you know. Don't have children,
You don't know.
you don't know, but you probably
You know
because you have parents at least,
You
right?
should give an opinion, I guess.
You have parents though. That's how you probably would have felt had your parents talked to you about that. How did Jethro make the case that his suggestions would be good for Moses and the people? And this is 18 to 23. Obey my voice. I give you advice. God be with you. So what's his case though?
Well, he basically tells him, you need some help,
Yep.
and here's how you can do it.
Oh.
He doesn't just say, you better change things, Moses. He gives him a concrete suggestion on how.
Yeah. He just doesn't say you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Yeah. He tells, here's how you can do it. And he doesn't remove Moses from the equation. You're going to be the top dog, Moses, but make a hierarchical system. Put people under you.
It's similar to what we heard about the apostles and, the administrative aspects of their work.
Yeah.
Like, hey, devote yourselves to preaching and prayer and get some other guys to wait tables.
It's interesting how that, in that case, though, they come up with that themselves.
Yeah, but
Nobody had to
got an
tell them to
example.
do
This
this.
is almost sort of an example.
Exactly. They knew their scriptures. They knew exactly what was going on.
But did they really come up with it themselves?
But, of course, not.
No.
The Holy Spirit inspired them.
Yeah.
Which is the case here. It's the Holy Spirit is inspiring the priest committee. Yep. I think that's a great point. Okay, Jethro points out that both the people and Moses are going to be worn out with this system. So he affirms Moses' rightful place in teaching the people how to live. He then suggested that he appoint capable men to share the burden. Jethro advises Moses to establish a hierarchical judiciary, with Moses at the top as a king would have been in a monarchy and as a priest or a family patriarch would have been in tribal societies. In this structure, some disputes can be settled in the lower levels. In the absence of sufficient evidence in complex or serious cases, the matter was handed prophetically. That is, it is brought before God. This was where Moses' involvement was essential. Again, this is a Bible background commentary on the Old Testament with Walton, Matthews, and Chabelis.
I wonder if there's sort of a theme there where there was one Moses, there was 12 disciples, and then it goes like 144,000 or whatever. Like
Yes, there is a thing.
there are enhancements going on over history of God working among people.
Yeah, that's a common theme in the Old Testament. You start with one person and it's expanded out to a crowd, and then it gets reduced back to one person again. So you got to a huge, the population of the earth, and then it's narrowed back down to Noah, and then the population of the earth, and it's narrowed down to Abraham, and then the population of all of Israel narrowed down to Moses. And then you have all the children of Israel gets narrowed down to David. And then you have all of that Israel, and it's narrowed down to Jesus. And then you have the 12 apostles, the 72 apostles, the 500 brothers at the same time, and then the church today. This is the
And it hasn't gone down to one since Jesus.
well.
or-
Then you get Pope. Yeah, there's the bishops,
Yeah,
and
yes,
and there's that's the hierarchical system of the church as well. Now you may be able to make a case that shouldn't be that way. The Missouri Synod takes the best of both worlds. We're both congregational in our government. The congregations reign supreme, but there's also a head honcho that we can always pass the buck to. So, but yeah, so that is an ongoing thing. It's the same thing in our families as well. Who's the patriarch or who's the matriarch in the family, right? You always go back to that person.
And that changes also then.
Absolutely.
Generations, that will change.
Right. And so this is where it's important to keep the family unit together so that when these things happen, and you're going to need these things, you're going to need the help there of dealing with issues, then that it doesn't necessarily make the issue easier to deal with. It can still be very, very difficult, but at least you're doing it together. Churches can do the same thing. We have a core group of leaders, but we have to, in a sense, train our replacements, right? And we just this is the trap that many pastors find themselves in, and it happens with presidents of congregations too. I want it done right. I got to just do it myself, and that's why I think a lot of pastors end up leaving the ministry. A lot of people leave the church. They do all the work and then they just get burned out and then they leave. Healthy churches delegate. Healthy groups delegate too. Where are we at? 10. How did Jethro affirm Moses' abilities even when he advised Moses to let go of some of the responsibilities? What does he do? In essence, what is he saying to Moses? You can do this. You are the top of the line. God has spoken to you. And this is, I get this in verse 23. If you do this, God will direct you and you will be able to endure. You can do this. Okay. So as a result of Jethro's visit, what changes were brought about for the Hebrew people and for Moses in particular in 24 to 27?
Moses sets up the,
Hey, listen to him.
Yeah. These are the elders of Israel now. This would later be called the Sanhedrin. Today it's called the Knesset. So, or whatever you want to call it in particular group. But in Israel, the Knesset is kind of the way that they're set up as well to help lead. It makes sense too. It's the same thing in our country. The way we're set up. We have a Congress. We have executive. We have judiciary. Yeah, whatever. However you feel that those are doing their things, but maybe not. What spirit do you think prevailed between Jethro and Moses as Jethro left in verse 27?
there was still a good relationship.
Yes. Moses led his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country. I think that there was a good relationship there. They still had the same relationship they had when he showed up. But also in a sense that Moses didn't keep him around. Hey, you help me, right? He felt confident enough in his own abilities at this point. Jethro was confident enough in his abilities. He felt that confidence flowed into Moses as well. The good results of verses 25 to 27 are a credit to both Moses and Jethro. Moses listened in verse 24. Jethro gave counsel worth listening to. What wisdom would you like to pass along to your grown children or other young people? I know what I would want my kids to know that, look, this country's been around for a long time. Church has been around a lot longer. We can endure this. I know it looks bad now, but we can get through this. We've gotten through bad before, and the church has always been there for it. Your faith can get you through this. That's what I try to pass on to my kids.
Yeah, and I think, obviously knowing the Lord is in charge. And I think respect your elders. I mean, I do get a sense here that Moses really respected
Yes.
Jethro.
Yeah, we never told that you would think, because the scriptures don't gloss over flaws, that if Moses told Jethro to pound sand, we would have gotten it. But he doesn't.
And knowing Moses, you very well could have.
Yeah. That certainly would have been kept in character if, we wouldn't have been surprised.
Flat out, old man, I want to do this myself. The Lord put me in charge.
Yeah. How would you know anyway?
Right.
You're a millionaire, for crying out loud. Yeah, but he doesn't. And that's that importance of our elders have earned our respect simply by living as long as they did. Because look at how hard it is to live today. We got kids checking out all the time. So this must not be easy. And I think that that's maybe a dirty little secret we don't often voice out loud is it is hard to live today. It's hard. I just had not this last week, the week before, some friends of ours from college, their son committed suicide, 24 years old. It is hard. Yeah, and we shake our heads and we're sad about that, but I think that we don't truly appreciate, when we were growing up, what would our parents have told us to do? Just suck it up and get going,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And today it's a little bit harder, maybe.
Yeah, they don't like hearing that.
No, nobody likes to hear that anyway.
Well, that's one of the things I said,
Suck it up, Buttercup. Like
Yeah, put your big boy pants on.
Right.
Deal with it.
Or we had a saying in our neighborhood, man, you gotta fight your own battles. We didn't get our parents involved. And that's maybe why we were maybe independent in the 60s, 70s, but that was a saying, man, fight your own battles.
And today where we're at because of that. Some of the good, some of the bad
Yeah.
is from that flows from that that bringing up. But our kids today, the young people, don't have that experience anymore. So we're going to have to help them one way or the other. And I think that one of the keys to that is listen to them, be patient with them, love them, even when it's hard to love them. So, in other words, pray that you will be sensitive to people's feelings, even when you believe that they are making big mistakes, and ask God for wisdom to know when to be silent and when to speak up. There's going to come a time, I think, in a lot of people's lives, they're going to come to us and say, why didn't you say something? Well, I don't want to hurt your feelings. You wouldn't have listened anyway. Those are excuses. And wouldn't you, right? If something goes completely haywire in your life and your parents knew about it and didn't say anything, I think the thought might cross your mind is, why didn't they say something to me?
Just like the shooter from Highland Park, you know, maybe the father's looking now as an enabler that he got his son a FOID card and helped him get the rifles, and now he's being punished because he maybe did speak out and knew the kid had some big issues. So people hope in our society now we're kind of holding people saying, hey, you know, you needed to tell someone. But then again, the other thing you hear in the news, well, we told the police that he had issues and nothing was done. You know, we let them, many people know, school, the police, that he had some major mental issues and nothing was done. You know,
So we got to
hear
say
that
something, right?
coming forward too.
It's better to say something and be, you know, risk being, you know, dismissed or hated for it than to not say something at all and somebody gets really, really lost, hurt. All right. So the last part is on your own type of thing. And you can study 1 Samuel 2. Right? All right. That's a little bit of homework there for when Pastor Ryan picks it up with wiser by faith. So, all right. Let's close with prayer. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this brief excursus into generations speaking to one another and wisdom from the older generation to a new generation. Pray that you will help us who have wisdom to pass that wisdom on to others in love so that we can all grow and especially grow closer to you. In Jesus' name, amen.